Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 3 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. If you have a story you'd like to share, you can submit it to us by email at karmastoriespod@gmail.com. Alright, on to today's stories, let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Icy Wing 1782, finally able to give a Karen some grief. A bit of background, I used to work at a popular grocery store that's known for rolling over for customers. I started working for this grocery store during my gap year before college. I wanted to save up some money before taking on the crippling burden that is student loans. When I started, the job was easy enough and the vast amount of people were kind. I didn't have to deal with a lot of Karens, and the hours were flexible. I really enjoyed my coworkers and managers. Life seemed great. That is, until our department got a new boss. I don't know what it is about new bosses, but they always have to go on a power trip to consolidate power and show everyone they mean business. Our Karen manager went around the department and started criticizing people for the stupidest things. Even if we were doing our job correctly, she would show up and tell us to work faster, and we were stealing company time. We all hated her, but she is our boss, so we just tried to do what we were told. I pride myself on finding the quickest and most efficient way to do a job. Thanks for the upbringing, Mom. I applied this to any of my duties for the day. It just so happened that the end of the day was coming up, and we had to return products that customers left behind. Non-perishable, of course. I was voluntold to go do it. This wasn't an issue, as I had done this plenty of times before. I went about my task and finished in about 10 minutes. The second I got done, my Karen manager called me into her office, and the following conversation ensued. "Close the door. Now, do you know why I called you in here?" "No." "I'm trying to improve efficiency in the department, and you took way long to do those go-backs. I won't tolerate people slacking off in my department. Do you understand?" I wasn't slacking off. I tried to defend myself. I was just... She cut me off. She reiterated, "Do you understand?" Knowing I was being railroaded, I just sighed and said yes. "To ensure you don't slack off again, you are forbidden from doing any more go-backs. I don't care if the store manager tells you otherwise. This is my department, and you will do as I say. I'm the boss." I get a smile on my face as I realize what she just said. I nod my head and reply, "Understood, I won't do go-backs no matter what." My Karen manager replied with an umbrage smile and said, "Good, now go back to work and don't forget what I said. I'm the boss." I turned around so she couldn't see my crap-eating grin and said, "Don't worry, message received loud and clear." A few days go by without incident until I finally get a chance to put my malicious compliance into action. The front desk supervisor sees that the go-back card is full and asks me to return the products. I smile and say, "Sorry, supervisor. Karen manager said I was wasting time and I am no longer allowed to return products." The supervisor gives me a weird look, but just shrugs and tells another coworker to do it instead. This cycle continues on for the next month. One day, the store manager happens to be manning the front desk. The end of the day rolls around and he looks at me and says, "Hey, OP, we have a lot of go-backs and I need you to return them." "Sorry, store manager, I'm not allowed to do go-backs anymore on account of slacking off." Store manager looks frustrated and says, "I don't care if you're allowed to or not, I'm telling you to take these back." "Sorry, store manager, Karen manager told me I'm not allowed to do any more go-backs no matter what, and I'd better follow her orders. Karen manager told me that this is her department and that she is the boss." Store manager looked pissed and stormed into the manager's office. A few minutes later, store manager called Karen manager to his office over the intercom. Karen manager came waddling out of her office and went into store manager's office. The door closed and we could all hear muffled yelling. After about 10 minutes, the door opened and Karen manager shuffled out. She glared daggers at me and told me to come to her office. I happily complied and said, "Yes, Karen manager, how can I be of assistance? You are allowed to do go-backs again, that is all." I smirked and left her office, happy that I could put a Karen in her place. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Tonka Trucks 369. It says, "I would have then proceeded to take hours to do the 10-minute job. It's been so long, I don't remember how to do this quickly anymore." Wait a minute, something doesn't fit here. Karen was the manager? What? Karen here tried to micromanage but then got a dose of reality from the store manager. Absolutely priceless. It is really impressive how someone can reach that level of incompetence and still think they're a genius. She had it coming, OP. You just let her dig her own grave. This story also comes to us from Icy Wing 1782. "If you don't like it, then leave." Okay, I will. This story takes place about 2 months before I quit my job at the grocery store and started my first year of college. This story has a bit of exposition, so please bear with me. I was glad when I got to put my Karen manager in her place. Things had slowly started to cool down, and for the next few months, it was business as usual. The old store manager had to open another store, so they brought in a new one. This one was very professional and quite kind. This store manager always recognized various employees in different departments for their hard work. This recognition of us lower employees made our Karen manager less than happy. I started to notice a lot more people being hired, and everyone's hours suffered because of it. I found out later they did this because part-time employees could be paid less, and they wanted to cut costs. 'Tis the life of a retail worker. I wanted to keep making money in preparation for college, so I went into Karen manager's office and said, "Hey Karen manager, I noticed my hours were being cut, and I wanted to see if I could pick up some extra shifts." She scoffed at me and said, "It's a department-wide decision. If you want hours, go to another department. I wouldn't waste your time though." I looked at her confused and asked, "Why not?" "They only have hard-working employees in their departments. You wouldn't fit in." I was dumbfounded. I thought Karen's BS routine was over, but boy was I wrong. I stood there unsure what to say. Meanwhile, Karen manager had another umbrage smile plastered on her face. I just turned around and walked out of her office. I didn't know if Karen manager had already lied to the other managers or not, but I might as well ask. I first went to the meat department and explained my situation. I told the manager that our department's hours were being cut and asked if I could do anything to help them out. The meat manager smiled warmly and said, "I understand how frustrating low hours can be. We have a guy on vacation for a few weeks, and we have had to stay late to wash all the pans and plates for our meat. It's simply washing and drying. You get to wear headphones within reason, and you would make what a starting meat associate would. Want the job?" I was beaming and immediately took the offer. The job was simple as he promised, and I took it seriously. I wanted to show other managers that I was a hard worker and reliable. 3 weeks passed by with no issue. Inevitably, their missing associate came back, and I had to be let go from that position. Luckily, I had spoken to the grocery manager the day before, and our conversation was somewhat similar. I explained my situation, and she understood. She said, "You just need to tidy up the shelves, put out product on aisle-labeled carts, and help unload trucks when they come in. Your pay will be a starting grocery associate pay." For context, both types of associate pay were an increase from my normal department. I took the offer and immediately helped the grocery department. Everything was fine until grocery hired a full-time employee, and I had to go back to my normal department. I expected business as usual, but I got one heck of a surprise. The first day back, Karen manager yanked me into her office. The conversation went like this: "What the heck do you think you're doing, OP? I told you our department's hours were cut." "I know. You said I could try working with other departments. You also said some other nasty things, but I don't care to repeat those." She glared at me and said, "OP, you're making our department look bad. We're trying to cut costs, and you're burning through hours we don't have." I decided to correct this smug Karen and said, I understand you want to cut costs and you only have so many hours. I didn't take up any extra hours from our department. I took your rude suggestion and worked for other departments that were short-staffed and had an abundance of hours. I did nothing wrong. She growled at me and said, "Listen, OP, it's not fair to others in our department if you get full time and other employees don't." I held my ground and said, "This system of hiring tons of part-timers is stupid, and it's hurting quality full-time employees who need the hours. If you insist on hiring all these people, there is nothing stopping them from doing exactly what I did. There are plenty of departments that could use help." I was fed up with Karen's attitude and spoke my mind. "If you think my management practice is so ridiculous, you can just leave." I was tired of her BS and just smiled. "Okay, I will." I turned in my effects and clogged out. I said bye to my friends and drove home. The next day, I was enjoying sleeping in for once when I got a phone call. It was the new store manager. I answered. "Hello, store manager. How are you this morning?" "Sorry to bother you, OP, but could you come back to the store? I looked over the firing of you yesterday, and Karen manager was totally out of line. I talked to other managers you have worked for, and they all had glowing reviews of your work. We're pretty short-staffed, and we need you back." I smiled. It was always nice to be needed after all. "If you transfer me to grocery effective immediately, with the pay bump to boot, I will help your department when needed, but I want grocery manager as my new boss." "Done. I just pulled up your file and transferred you over. You have my word, grocery manager is your new boss, and Karen manager has no authority over you anymore. I'll be having a long talk with her over her managerial practices, believe me." I smirked and said, "I will see you in 10 minutes. I drove to the store and walked in. I picked up my effects from the store manager and shook his hand. I saw the shocked face of Karen manager and snickered. I turned to a nearby customer with a smile. These last few weeks were going to be the best. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called New Bosterone. It says, "The best part of that situation is killing your nemesis with kindness. You know you've won, they know you've won, and you're consistently polite and professional towards them. They want an excuse to smack you down, but if they do, they're the bad guy." The Karen manager in this story seems to have some narcissistic traits, where they want to make everybody else look bad because they think it'll make them look better. Really not a great way to be a manager. We've said it many times on this channel, but people don't generally leave a job, they leave a manager. And in this case, OP, I don't blame you one bit. This story comes to us from Social Unavailable. "You want to call my mom because I don't want to die? Okay, call her." I was recently reminded of a malicious compliance I did as a kid. For context, I had an extremely bad peanut and tree nut allergy. If I eat or touch peanuts or nuts, I can go into anaphylactic shock, meaning my throat closes up and basically I'll choke to death. I carry an EpiPen with me at all times because of this. Additional information on this teacher, she hated children, like the type of teacher who yells at kids if they got something incorrect. For the sake of keeping everything anonymous, I'll call her Mrs. Idiot and refer to myself as me. With that out of the way, on to the story. I was in first grade, and by this time, I had a good grasp on how bad my peanut and nut allergy was. Always read labels, never eat others' home-cooked meals, and that I shouldn't trust someone just because they say, "I don't think it has nuts in it." If you don't know, then don't offer those foods to small children who may not know any better. It was first grade, and I was having fun coloring something on paper, waiting for my teacher. As I was finishing drawing, my teacher got out a fun activity worksheet involving candy. If I remember correctly, it involved counting or something math-related. As she was passing out the worksheets and candy, I noticed there were M&Ms, which I'm allergic to. The interaction went something like this. "Mrs. Idiot, I can't have these, I'm allergic. They're original M&Ms, they don't have peanuts in them. But my mom says I'm allergic to the originals too. They're fine, you can have them." To this day, I don't know why a teacher would ever tell a kid with allergies to eat something the kid thinks or knows they're allergic to. Also, while original M&Ms don't have peanuts or nuts directly in them, they're made on the same equipment as peanut M&Ms. This exchange went on for a while, with the idiotic teacher telling me that they're fine, and me saying they're not. I think the teacher actually believed I was purposely trying to annoy her. "If you don't start behaving, I'm gonna call your mother and you will be in big trouble." Younger me realized that my mom was just going to say the same thing. Instead of telling her that, I sat there and smiled at the teacher and said, "Okay, call her." I remember wondering why the teacher just didn't believe me. Looking back, that teacher definitely hated being told she was wrong, especially by a first grader. The idiot teacher looked annoyed but smug, I guess thinking that my mom would yell at me for not wanting to die or have a giant needle put in my thigh and being rushed to the hospital. Now, I don't know the full exchange between my mom and the idiot teacher because this was so long ago and my mom doesn't remember what exactly was said, just that she was extremely angry. I know she tore into my teacher because me and everyone who was present in class could hear my mom yelling through the phone. I think for the first time ever, I saw my idiotic teacher actually nervous. After my mom tore the teacher a new one, the teacher brought me to the corner of the room and handed me a bag of Skittles, which she apparently had the entire time. It sucked being alone for the activity, but I happily did my assignment eating my packet of Skittles, knowing fully well my teacher was simmering at her desk, annoyed that a 7-year-old knew better than she did. Later, it was revealed that my mom sent an email to the school's principal, which luckily for the idiotic teacher's case was my mom's second draft and had nicer words in it. That teacher had to do a refresher course on allergies by the nurse, which was shown to her already at the beginning of the year. I guess my school was desperate for teachers because she continued to teach at that school even though she had other incidents. As much as I'd like to say I ate the M&Ms and watched as her career tanked, blowing up like a Thanksgiving Day parade balloon, I did not. As the wise Sid the Sloth said, "No thanks, I choose life." Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Silly Confused. It says, "Too many people these days don't believe in nut allergies. It scares me and I don't have the allergy." OP responded and said, "I was luckily diagnosed at 4 months old and it was hammered into me as a kid that if I touched or eat peanuts, I could die. Kids can handle the concept of death and my mom knew this. I didn't live my life in fear, I just knew the consequences and made sure to take precautions." Another commenter down below called CTTC Jim said, "For a long time, there was a lot of pushback on allergy accommodation because it was perceived as shifting responsibility for the allergy from the individual onto everyone else, allowing the individual to not worry about it because the community is forced to protect them. The truth is more nuanced. Allergies are complex and difficult to manage, and without community support, people can be badly hurt or die. More people understand that than in the past. Most likely in the teacher's mind, she was taking a stand against encroachment of unreasonable expectations. It's all part of educators changing their philosophy to require caring for the children in their care. Unfortunately, the pushback still often happens on any new accommodations." OP responded to this one and said, "My mom was the one to actually enforce and put in allergy precautions at that school. It was a long time ago, and allergy information was still new. I would be more sympathetic towards the teacher if she wasn't reminded several times, being showed videos on peanut allergies, and have had a close run-in before. We had a Christmas party, and she assigned my mom to bring in Reese's peanut butter candies. This was before the incident." I want to go back and talk about M&Ms a little bit in this one because not only are they manufactured in the same factory, but they're manufactured in the exact same equipment. I've actually had times where I've bought a regular bag of M&Ms and there's been one peanut one in there with them. I've got to say that I'm actually really happy that this wasn't a story where OP actually ate the candy anyway and then had a major allergic reaction, because that's extremely dangerous. And that's not the way you want to maliciously comply. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to your favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.